What if a simple part-time job turned into the most unexpected love story? He thought he was just being hired to walk a dog, easy cash, no strings attached. But the owner, cold, mysterious, impossibly attractive, and very clear about one thing: don't walk the dog. Why would someone hire a dog walker if they didn't want the dog walked? And more importantly, what secret was he really guarding? Welcome to today's BL Webtoon romance, a manhwa love story full of unexpected twists, forbidden feelings, and a yaoi romance you'll never forget. The story begins with Ji-hoon, a 22-year-old college student whose life could be summed up in one word: survival. Every morning he woke before dawn, not because he wanted to, but because the world had left him little choice. His scholarship barely covered tuition, and his family's financial situation was too fragile to rely on. So Ji-hoon worked, sometimes in the campus library, shelving dusty books, sometimes at a convenience store, restocking shelves, sometimes at a tiny cafe tucked between two streets where the machines hissed and steamed long into the night. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't easy, but Ji-hoon carried himself with a quiet determination. He had a way of smiling at customers even when exhaustion lined his face, a way of nodding politely to professors even when he hadn't slept more than 3 hours. Beneath that soft politeness was resilience, though most people never noticed it. To most, he was just another struggling student, invisible in the crowd. Yet, that invisibility had always defined him. Ji-hoon had learned to fade into the background, to carry burdens without complaint. Maybe it was because he grew up as the middle child in a family where attention was scarce. Maybe it was because he never wanted to cause trouble. Either way, he had perfected the art of being overlooked until the day everything began to change. It started with something simple, a friend's casual recommendation. "Hey Ji-hoon, you like dogs, right? There's this rich guy up in the hills who's looking for someone to walk his. The pay's insane, way more than your cafe job. You should try it." At first, Ji-hoon laughed it off. The wealthy part of town was like another universe. Its gated houses and sleek cars so far removed from his cramped dorm room and instant ramen dinners. But as the week dragged on, with tuition bills looming like storm clouds and his body aching from too many double shifts, the thought stuck in his mind. A dog walking job, good pay, fresh air, easy work. What could go wrong? So one chilly afternoon, Ji-hoon found himself climbing the steep roads that wound into the hills, backpack slung over one shoulder, heart pounding with both nerves and a tiny flicker of hope. The houses here were nothing like the ones near campus. They weren't homes, they were fortresses, glass walls, manicured lawns, silent driveways with cars worth more than Ji-hoon's entire neighborhood. When he finally reached the address scribbled on a slip of paper, Ji-hoon had to pause. The house was a sprawling structure of steel and glass, perched like it was watching over the entire city below. Its tall gates gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the silence around it was so heavy that Ji-hoon felt as if he'd stepped onto forbidden ground. He almost turned back, almost told himself this was a mistake. But then the gate clicked open, as if expecting him. And that was the moment he saw him, Sung-hyun, the man who would unravel everything Ji-hoon thought he knew about himself. Sung-hyun stood in the doorway like a figure cut from shadow and light, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that could have been drawn by an artist obsessed with perfection. His hair was dark, falling slightly into his eyes, and his expression carried the weight of someone who had seen too much, yet revealed nothing. "Are you Ji-hoon?" he asked, his voice low and even. Ji-hoon swallowed hard, suddenly aware of his scuffed sneakers, the worn strap of his bag, the sweat clinging to his palms. He nodded quickly. Yes, I'm here for the dog-walking job. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Seung-hyun's gaze was steady, assessing, the kind of look that made Ji-hoon feel transparent. Then without a word, he stepped aside, gesturing for Ji-hoon to enter. The inside of the house was even more intimidating. High ceilings, polished floors, art pieces that looked far too expensive to touch. And yet, in the middle of this quiet luxury, a sudden burst of warmth broke the stillness. A huge, fluffy samoyed bounded across the room, tail wagging, eyes sparkling with joy. Ji-hoon barely had time to react before the dog pressed against his legs, nuzzling at him as if they'd known each other forever. "This is Cloud," Seung-hyun said simply. His voice softened, barely, when he spoke the name. Ji-hoon knelt, running his fingers through the dog's thick fur, and for the first time since arriving, he smiled. "Hi, Cloud. You're beautiful." But before he could reach for the leash hanging by the door, Seung-hyun's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You won't take her outside." Ji-hoon blinked, unsure if he'd misheard. "I won't?" Seung-hyun's gaze was unreadable. "You'll come here. You'll spend time with her. You'll feed her, brush her, play with her, but you won't leave this house with her, ever." Ji-hoon hesitated, confusion swirling in his chest. "But isn't this a dog-walking job?" Seung-hyun's eyes didn't waver. "That's the rule. If you can't follow it, you can leave now." The firmness in his tone left no room for argument. Ji-hoon glanced at Cloud, who licked his hand eagerly, then back at the man towering before him. A dozen questions itched at the back of his throat, but he bit them down. The pay was good. He needed this. So he nodded. "I'll stay." From that day forward, Ji-hoon's life began to intertwine with Seung-hyun's in ways he never expected. Every afternoon, he came to the mansion. Cloud greeted him like sunshine, her fluffy coat soft under his hands, her playful barks filling the silence of the house. But always, Seung-hyun was there, sometimes leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching with an intensity that made Ji-hoon's skin prickle, sometimes disappearing into his study, though Ji-hoon could feel his presence lingering, like a shadow that refused to leave. At first, Ji-hoon told himself it didn't matter. He was here for the dog, nothing else. But the longer he stayed, the more he noticed. The way Seung-hyun's voice softened when he whispered to Cloud at night, thinking Ji-hoon couldn't hear. The way his hand lingered, just for a moment, when he passed Ji-hoon a cup of tea on cold afternoons. The way his expression, so unreadable at first, cracked in fleeting moments, tired, vulnerable, almost human. Ji-hoon shouldn't have cared, but he did. He found himself staying longer than necessary, lingering even after Cloud had fallen asleep at his feet. He found himself talking, to the dog, yes, but also to Seung-hyun, filling the silence with little stories about school, about life, about nothing at all. And sometimes, Seung-hyun even answered. It was subtle, slow, but something unspoken began to grow. And Ji-hoon, the boy who had always been invisible, began to wonder if, for once, someone truly saw him. When a friend tells him about an easy gig walking dogs in a wealthy neighborhood, Ji-hoon doesn't hesitate. The pay is generous, the hours are flexible, and honestly, Ji-hoon loves dogs more than most people. But when he arrives at the luxurious glass and steel home tucked into the hills, he quickly realizes this isn't an ordinary job. The door opens and standing there is Seung-hyun, the kind of man who could walk straight out of a romance manhwa panel. Tall, sharp jawline, piercing eyes that seemed to see right through you. Dressed in tailored black, his presence is commanding, intimidating even. Are you Ji-hoon? His voice is cool, measured. Ji-hoon nods, fumbling with his backpack straps. And then, the strangest instruction. You'll come every afternoon. You'll stay for 2 hours, but you won't take the dog outside. Ever. Ji-hoon blinks. But I thought this was a dog walking job. Seung-hyun doesn't explain. He simply gestures toward a massive, fluffy Samoyed lounging on a velvet rug. The dog's name is Cloud, and she greets Ji-hoon with tail wags and eager eyes. Confused but unwilling to risk losing the pay, Ji-hoon agrees. He plays with Cloud, brushes her fur, keeps her company. Still, he can't shake the oddity. Why hire someone to walk a dog if the dog isn't allowed beyond the gates? And more unsettling than that, why does Seung-hyun watch him so closely every time he comes? At first, Ji-hoon told himself it didn't matter. It was just a paycheck, nothing more. He had taken jobs stranger than this one after all. Cleaning offices late at night when the world was silent, tutoring children who cared more about their phones than their homework, delivering takeout during storms that soaked him through to the bone. Compared to those, feeding a dog in a mansion wasn't difficult at all. But Ji-hoon was not prepared for the weight of curiosity. Every day he arrived at the mansion perched on the hill, greeted first by the iron gates that slid open soundlessly at his presence. He still wasn't sure how they knew, whether there was some hidden camera tracking him, or if Seung-hyun himself was waiting, watching. Whatever the reason, the gates always opened before he reached them, as though the house itself had accepted him. Then came Cloud, a burst of life and warmth in a place that otherwise felt like a museum. Her tail wagged furiously, her fluffy body barreling into Ji-hoon with such joy that he couldn't help but laugh each time. She licked his hands, circled his legs, and barked as if to scold him for being late, even when he was perfectly on time. And after Cloud came Seung-hyun, always there, always watching. Sometimes he lingered in the corner of the room, leaning against the wall with effortless elegance, pretending to scroll through his phone. Ji-hoon could see the faint glow of the screen reflected in Seung-hyun's sharp eyes, but his fingers hardly moved. It was obvious he wasn't really looking at whatever was on the device. He was watching Ji-hoon instead, quietly, intently, in a way that made Ji-hoon's skin prickle and his heart stumble. Other times, Seung-hyun disappeared into his study, vanishing behind heavy doors that Ji-hoon had never once seen open. Yet even then, Ji-hoon felt it, the weight of presence like a gravity that pressed down on the room even in Seung-hyun's absence. The silence of the house wasn't emptiness. It was filled with him. At first, Ji-hoon tried to ignore it. He knelt on the polished floor, tossing Cloud's favorite toy across the carpet, laughing softly when she tripped over her own paws in her eagerness to bring it back. He brushed her thick fur carefully, humming under his breath, speaking to her in the casual, affectionate tone he had never dared to use with humans. "This is a good job," he would whisper into her ear when she lay sprawled across his lap, snoring softly. "You and me, Cloud. Nothing else matters." But the words rang hollow, even to himself. Because something did matter. Something gnawed at him every time he felt Seung-hyun's gaze flicker toward him. Every time the silence stretched too long. Every time he caught himself glancing up, searching for the man even when he wasn't supposed to. Ji-hoon didn't understand it. Curiosity wasn't supposed to feel this heavy, this sharp. It wasn't just that Seung-hyun was rich or mysterious or impossibly handsome, though all of that was true. It was the way he carried himself, like someone who lived inside walls invisible to everyone else. It was the way his expression never cracked, never softened, except in fleeting moments when he touched Cloud, or when Ji-hoon thought he saw something flicker in those dark eyes. It made Ji-hoon want to ask questions he had no right to ask. Why does someone like you live alone in a house this big? Why can't Cloud ever leave the gates? Why do you watch me like I'm more than just a dog sitter? But Ji-hoon bit his tongue. He needed the job. He needed the money. He couldn't risk offending the man who paid him more for a single afternoon than his other jobs paid in days. So he pretended. He told himself Sung-hyun's gaze didn't make his chest tighten, that the silence wasn't suffocating, that he wasn't slowly, secretly rearranging his entire day around these hours in the mansion, these moments of being seen. But no matter how much he lied to himself, the truth pressed harder each day. It began with the smallest of cracks. One rainy afternoon, Ji-hoon arrived dripping wet, his umbrella nearly collapsing under the wind. He tried to shake the water from his jacket before stepping inside, embarrassed at the trail of droplets he left on the pristine floor. Cloud, of course, bounded to him anyway, pawing at his legs and showering him in more water from her damp fur. "I'm sorry," Ji-hoon laughed breathlessly, kneeling to wipe her down with the towel he always kept in his bag. "I'll clean up after, I promise." When he looked up, Sung-hyun was there, standing with a towel in hand. Ji-hoon blinked in surprise. "Oh, I've got one, it's fine." But Sung-hyun didn't answer. He stepped forward silently, unfolding the towel, and draped it over Ji-hoon's shoulders with a motion so gentle that Ji-hoon froze. "Don't catch a cold," Sung-hyun said quietly. His voice carried none of its usual sharpness. It was soft, almost absent-minded, like he wasn't used to speaking in such a way. Ji-hoon's heart thudded painfully against his ribs. He wanted to speak, to thank him, to joke it off, but the words lodged in his throat. He could only nod, his fingers clutching the edge of the towel like it was a lifeline. That night, when he returned to his dorm room and collapsed onto his bed, Ji-hoon realized he hadn't been able to stop thinking about the warmth of Sung-hyun's hands brushing against his shoulders. It wasn't supposed to matter, but it did. Another crack appeared days later. Ji-hoon had been telling Cloud about his classes, his voice animated in a way it rarely was with other people. "I swear, my professor hates me. I turn in my papers on time. I even format them the way he wants, but he always writes something like lacks depth in red ink." "What does that even mean, huh, Cloud?" "Depth? I'm drowning in debt. Isn't that deep enough?" Cloud barked, her tail wagging as if she understood. Ji-hoon laughed, reaching to scratch behind her ears. That was when a quiet voice spoke from the corner. "It means he sees potential you're not reaching." Ji-hoon startled, whipping around. Sung-hyun was leaning against the wall, phone in hand, though his eyes were firmly on Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon stammered, "I didn't realize you were listening." Sung-hyun didn't move. "You always assume people aren't listening." The words struck deeper than they should have. Ji-hoon wanted to protest, to deny it, but something about Sung-hyun's gaze made him falter. Instead, he muttered, "Maybe, because they usually aren't." A beat of silence passed. Then Sung-hyun pushed off the wall, his footsteps soundless against the floor as he disappeared into the hall. Ji-hoon was left staring after him, his pulse quick, his chest strangely hollow. It was supposed to be simple. Come in, feed the dog, play for a while, leave. But with every passing day, the job became something else. A routine he craved, a ritual of glances, silences, and fleeting words. Ji-hoon found himself wondering what Sung-hyun did behind the closed door of his study. He found himself noticing the details he shouldn't. The way Sung Hyun's hair curled slightly when damp, the faint shadow of stubble when he worked too late, the way his suits were always perfectly pressed, but his eyes looked weary, and he found himself imagining things he shouldn't. What it would feel like to sit across from Sung Hyun at dinner, rather than eating instant noodles alone in his dorm. What it would sound like if Sung Hyun laughed, truly laughed, instead of hiding behind silence. What it would mean if those unreadable eyes ever softened just for him. Ji-hoon told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But late at night, lying awake in the quiet hum of his dorm room, he realized the truth. Curiosity had become longing, and longing was dangerous, because Ji-hoon had walked into the mansion thinking he was invisible, thinking he was just another replaceable worker. But now, every time Sung Hyun looked at him, truly looked, Ji-hoon couldn't shake the feeling that for the first time in his life, he wasn't unseen. He was seen too clearly, and that terrified him. And slowly, something shifts. Ji-hoon begins to notice the contradictions. Sung Hyun's sharp, cold exterior versus the tenderness in the way he scratches Cloud behind the ears when he thinks no one's watching. The way his voice softens just slightly when he says, "Cloud, dinner." The way his eyes flicker, quick and unguarded, whenever Ji-hoon laughs. Ji-hoon can't help it. He teases, he smiles, he fills the silence with chatter. At first, Sung Hyun ignores him, but then small cracks appear. One evening, Ji-hoon jokes, "You know, for a guy who doesn't want his dog walked, you sure paid a lot of money." Sung Hyun looks up sharply. Ji-hoon expects annoyance. Instead, Sung Hyun's lips twitch, almost a smile. "Maybe I just needed someone stubborn enough not to ask too many questions," Sung Hyun replies. But Ji-hoon is stubborn, and questions keep piling up. At first, Ji-hoon thought nothing of it. Why would he? He was just a part-timer, a college student hired to walk a dog. Cloud was sweet, affectionate, the kind of dog who would happily leap into the arms of strangers. The mansion where she lived was quiet, pristine, and always smelled faintly of cedar and polished stone. But then there were the little things, the things Ji-hoon couldn't unsee once he noticed them. For instance, Cloud never left the gates, not once. The first time Ji-hoon clipped the leash to her collar and headed toward the entrance, Cloud bounded happily alongside him, tongue lolling out of her mouth. But as soon as they reached the iron gates, she stopped, sat down, refused to move. Ji-hoon tugged gently, confused. "Come on, girl, let's go for a real walk. You'll love it." Cloud only whined softly, looking not at Ji-hoon, but toward the mansion, toward the figure standing silently on the balcony above, Sung Hyun. His expression gave nothing away, but Ji-hoon could feel it, the tension rolling off him even from a distance. Slowly, Sung Hyun lifted a hand, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, and Cloud immediately rose to her feet, turning back toward the house as though commanded. Ji-hoon stared, unsettled. When he glanced back at Sung Hyun, the man had already disappeared into the shadows of the balcony. That was the first time Ji-hoon realized something was strange. It only grew clearer with time. Every day, Ji-hoon saw the cars, sleek, black, with windows tinted so dark they reflected the world like mirrors. They never parked directly in front of the mansion, but always lingered at a distance, as if trying to appear inconspicuous. Yet their presence was impossible to miss. Once, as Ji-hoon left the gates after his shift, he glanced toward one of the cars. For a moment, he thought he saw the faint outline of a figure in the driver's seat watching. By the time he blinked, the car had rolled smoothly down the street, vanishing like smoke. He told himself it was nothing, just wealthy people being strange. Rich families always had security, right? Maybe Sung-hyun was cautious. Maybe the cars were just a coincidence. But coincidences didn't explain the way Sung-hyun flinched whenever there was a sudden noise. One evening, a delivery truck backfired on the street outside. Ji-hoon jumped at the sound, startled, but Sung-hyun froze. His hand tightened on the arm of the sofa, knuckles pale, shoulders rigid as if expecting something far worse. Ji-hoon, kneeling on the floor with Cloud sprawled in his lap, noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Sung-hyun's head snapped toward him, eyes sharp, guarded. Then just as quickly, the mask slid back into place. He nodded once. "Fine." But Ji-hoon didn't believe him. Not for a second. The more time he spent in the mansion, the heavier the tension between them grew. It was more than just the silence. It was the way Sung-hyun's eyes followed him, lingering just a little too long when Ji-hoon bent to tie his shoes or reached to pull a book off the shelf. It was the way Ji-hoon's pulse quickened when their shoulders brushed in the hallway, a spark of heat shooting through him even as Sung-hyun stepped back immediately, as though he had touched fire. There was a distance that Sung-hyun worked hard to maintain, invisible lines he never allowed Ji-hoon to cross, and yet, every so often, something slipped through, like the night Ji-hoon fell asleep on the rug after hours of playing with Cloud, exhaustion pulling him under. He woke to find a blanket draped carefully over him, the faintest scent of cedar and cologne clinging to the fabric. Or the afternoon when Ji-hoon cut his hand on Cloud's food can, the metal edge slicing skin. Before Ji-hoon could even react, Sung-hyun was there, gripping his wrist, wrapping the wound in his handkerchief with such urgency that his usually steady hands trembled. "It's nothing," Ji-hoon whispered, startled by the intensity in his eyes. "It's not nothing," Sung-hyun replied sharply. His voice cracked, just slightly, betraying something Ji-hoon couldn't name. That was the moment Ji-hoon realized whatever haunted Sung-hyun, it wasn't just paranoia. It was fear. Real, bone-deep fear. But fear of what? Ji-hoon lay awake many nights turning the questions over in his mind. Why was Sung-hyun so protective of Cloud leaving the house? Was it really just caution? Or was there a danger waiting beyond those gates? Why were the tinted cars always nearby, silent and watchful? Were they protecting him or hunting him? Why did Sung-hyun flinch at noises, at shadows, at things most people would dismiss without a thought? And most of all, why did Ji-hoon feel so tangled up in it? It wasn't his business. He was just a dog walker. He was supposed to collect his paycheck, smile politely, and leave. But every time he saw the lines of tension in Sung-hyun's jaw, every time he caught those rare glimpses of vulnerability, something inside Ji-hoon twisted. He wanted to know, he wanted to understand, he wanted more. And that was dangerous too, because the tension between them wasn't just born of secrets, it was born of something else, something unspoken, undeniable, pulling them closer even as Sung-hyun fought to hold the line. The way Ji-hoon's laughter seemed to soften the edges of Sung-hyun's cold exterior. The way Sung-hyun's silence no longer felt like dismissal, but like restraint, as though he was holding back words he couldn't allow himself to say. The way every glance stretched too long, heavy with things neither dared to voice. It was fragile, precarious, like glass, balanced on the edge of a table. One wrong move, and it would shatter. But Ji-hoon couldn't stop leaning closer to the edge, and deep down, he knew, sooner or later, something would break. It builds in small ways, fingers brushing when they both reach for Cloud's leash. The time Ji-hoon trips and Sung-hyun catches him by the wrist, grip firm, eyes locked, neither of them moving until Cloud barks and breaks the spell. "Why do you always look at me like that?" Ji-hoon blurts once, cheeks flushed. Sung-hyun's jaw tightens. "Like what? Like you're trying to decide if I'm dangerous, or," Ji-hoon swallows, "or if you want me here." Silence, heavy, charged. Finally, Sung-hyun answers, "Maybe both." The words leave Ji-hoon breathless, but behind the budding attraction lies a shadow. Ji-hoon overhears a late-night phone call, Seung-hyun's voice low, urgent. "No, it's not safe yet. They can't find out where we are. Cloud is the priority." The realization hits Ji-hoon hard. This wasn't just about a dog. There's a secret here, a danger he doesn't understand. And when Sung-hyun catches him listening, his expression is unreadable, but his warning is clear. Some things, Ji-hoon, are better left unknown. Still, Ji-hoon is already too deep. The breaking point comes one stormy afternoon. Thunder shakes the windows. Cloud whines at the door, restless, desperate for a walk. Ji-hoon can't take it anymore. "Just once," he whispers, clipping on the leash. "She deserves fresh air." But the moment they step outside, headlights flash. A black car screeches to a stop at the gate. Men in suits step out, scanning the house. Panic floods Ji-hoon until Sung-hyun bursts through the door, pulling him back inside with a force that leaves him breathless. "Are you insane?" Sung-hyun snarls, slamming the lock. His hand is still gripping Ji-hoon's wrist, trembling. Ji-hoon's heart pounds. What's going on? Who are they? Sung-hyun's mask finally cracks. His eyes burn with fear and something else, something raw. "They're after me," he admits, voice hoarse. "And Cloud. And now," his gaze falters, "now you." The world tilts. Ji-hoon realizes he's stumbled into something far bigger than himself, but all he can focus on is Sung-hyun's closeness, the way his grip lingers, the vulnerability in his eyes. And then Sung-hyun whispers, almost broken, "I didn't want you dragged into this, but I can't let you go, Ji-hoon, not anymore." The confession lands like lightning. Ji-hoon's breath hitches, and before he can think, before the storm outside can drown them, Sung-hyun kisses him, fierce, desperate, like a man who's been holding back for far too long. From that night forward, nothing is the same. Ji-hoon learns the truth. Sung-hyun is hiding from powerful enemies, protecting Cloud because she's the last link to his past. The mansion, the secrecy, the fear, it was all about survival. But love changes things. Ji-hoon refuses to leave. He stays, not just for the paycheck, but because Sung-hyun's loneliness mirrors his own. Together they face the dangers outside, building trust in stolen moments, cups of tea shared after midnight, laughter when Cloud barrels between them, quiet confessions whispered in the dark. What began as a strange job becomes the foundation of something real, something lasting. And in the end, Ji-hoon realizes he wasn't hired to walk a dog. He was meant to walk into Sung-hyun's life. So, what did you think of this BL love story? Was it sweet, emotional, suspenseful? Comment below with your reaction. I'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe for more BL webtoon summaries, yaoi manhwa breakdowns, and romance story deep dives. Check the description for full story links and more BL recommendations.